This video is sponsored by Fiverr. Today I have a good one for you. I have a Photoshop full edit tutorial where I cover the entire process from frequency separation, dodge and burn, and color grading. And don't forget, I do leave a raw file in the description so that you guys can edit along with me. Now keep in mind, this is more of an intermediate tutorial, so if you're a beginner in Photoshop, don't worry. Si se puede con Infante. I have your back. I have beginner level tutorials on this channel. They cover dodge and burn, frequency separation, color grading, and how to save for Instagram. So now is the perfect time to subscribe to this channel because this channel is all about educational content. Now let's go ahead and cover todo el pedo. Before I get into Photoshop, if you're curious what I do at the raw level, I do have a Capture One tutorial that covers exactly what I did step by step for this photograph. So if you download the raw file, you might be like, este vato, this looks like nothing like what you're starting off with in Photoshop. I'll have that Capture One video linked in the description below. All right, now that I'm in Photoshop, one of the first things I'm gonna wanna do is I'm gonna wanna crop the image ever so slightly. So I'm gonna press C on the keyboard, get my crop tool, and we're gonna bring this down ever so slightly and raise this up and also crop in ever so slightly. So I want my subject centered within the frame. This is also gonna help me with my softbox because I like to get my softbox nice and close to get that nice soft light. In this case, I was moving relatively quick, and I got it in a little bit closer than I would have liked, but it's okay. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead, now that we've cropped, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new layer. So that's all I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna run my action. You can simply just press Command J if I wanted to here on the background layer. So I just made a copy. So the first thing I wanna do is we're gonna focus on the softbox, and then I'm gonna get to the pole in a little bit. All right, so let me just come over here. I'm gonna press J on the keyboard. I'm gonna get my patch tool. And I'm gonna figure out what tool is gonna work best for me to remove this. So all I did is I made a selection. And with my patch tool, I'm gonna bring my cursor inside and I'm gonna drag it across. And I'm just gonna try to find an area where I feel like it looks good. Let's see if it blends. And it blended pretty damn well. Now, in order for not to get repeats like this and this, I'm just gonna simply drag across here and just find like a regular blank area like that. And everything else, I think it looks pretty good. Let me try one more just so that we can kind of randomize it just a little bit more. So let's go right about there. And I would say that looks good. So I've already got my softbox out of the way. Now the next one is the pole. Unfortunately, I had the pole coming out of the head. Now let me explain why that happened. We had this beautiful sunset. The colors, if you've ever shot a beautiful sunset when I'm shooting my high-speed sync stuff, you'll know that sometimes you got to shoot, man, and you got to move quick. And unfortunately, I had the pole coming out of the head, so obviously that's not something that we would want to do. So unfortunately, I have to Photoshop it out. So if you guys want, you can roast me in the comments because yes, I should have framed it better when I was out there, but you got to move quick sometimes. And so in this case, like I mentioned, I had to do my best, but I knew that it was going to be an easy Photoshop fix. So I'm using the patch tool again. I already got the pole out, and now I'm going to get the little light out right about here. And let's see what that looks like. So it's not blending as well as I would want. So I'm going to see if I can find an area like this to get a sample from. And let's go across. And there we go. Now, right now, it's not blending as perfect as I would want. Don't worry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use frequency separation, the technique, in a moment to clean this up and also to clean up this section. So if you're looking at it and being like, oh my gosh, the sky looks crusty right now, don't worry. I'm going to go in there and fix it with frequency separation. So now that I got those two items out of the way, so if I just hit this eyeball before, after, once again, I'm going to come back and clean this up in a little bit with my mixer brush. Now I'm ready for frequency separation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my frequency separation action. And once again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial, I do have a frequency separation tutorial that explains everything. So if you're looking at this and you're saying like, what in the fudge bar is this guy doing? I explain everything in full detail. Check out that tutorial. It's linked in the description. So what I want to look for here is I am looking at the texture of the face. I want to make sure that the texture is separated from the skin color. All right, I'm also looking at the hair. So I want to make sure that the hair is not visible, the flyaways. And so at this number, 19, it looks like it's doing the trick. Now, remember that this number is going to be different on an image to image basis. So do not copy this number on maybe a different image that you take. But if you're following along with the tutorial, looks like 18, 19, 20 should work fine. So I'm going to change mine to 20. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and it should rock and roll. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and open up this dialog box. I'm going to collapse down my actions really quick, and I'm going to expand this ever so slightly. So now that I have my texture, this is what I'm going to focus on first, is my texture. So what I want to do is I want to clean up some of the blemishes, and then we'll get to the hair in a moment. But what I want to remove are some of the blemishes around the skin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the patch tool just by circling around and then dragging across. And that's all I'm going to do on this first section. Now you can also use, let me see if I can let's try the healing brush. And you can also use the healing brush. But on this tool, all you got to do is just hold Alt and sample some texture that looks similar and then just copy it over. And what I want to make sure I do is up here where it says sample, I'm going to do current layer, and same thing, Alt, and then click. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick, and then we'll move on to the next step. Before we move on, I do want to talk about today's video sponsor, which is Fiverr. Now, Fiverr is an amazing service that I've been using for over 3 years, and they provide awesome services like video editing, graphic design, and even photo editing. And the way I use it for my business is to help alleviate some of the stress and the work that I get. I am a full-time teacher, and I do photography on the side. And so every year I photograph the volleyball teams, and I do JV and varsity, and I create sponsorship posters. And I used to cut out all of the pictures individually, one by one, and it would take hours, and it would take time from my weekends, and I hated that. And so I soon started realizing I need to outsource this, and I need to check out services like Fiverr. And what's great about Fiverr is you can just go to the website, search for whatever service that you're looking for, which in my case, I was looking for Photoshop cutouts. I simply just do a search and see which freelancers are available, and I can look at the reviews and the ratings. And once I found my freelancer that I wanted to work with, I simply just gave him a description of exactly what I was looking for. And what I love is that I can go to sleep knowing that all of this extra work that I have is gonna get done professionally. And as soon as I got all the deliverables back, I have all the cutouts nice and neat, and I'm simply able to just drag and drop all of these pictures onto the template that I already have. Now, let me tell you that Fiverr has been one of the best decisions that I've made for my business. It has saved so much time, but also so much energy. And now I have more time to either do photographs or just relax with my family. Head over to Fiverr and check out the services available to you and get 10% off with code Eli Infante. All right, now that I have the face cleaned up, now I'm going to focus on the hair, especially this section right here. So I'm going to press J on the keyboard, and I'm going to make sure I switch it to my patch tool. And I'm going to go ahead and just sample around and grab that texture and drag it to something I want it to look like. So I want it to blend in something like that. That's looking good. And the same thing here. And now I'm going to go into my clone stamp so that I can be a little bit more precise. I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm going to fix this color in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and hold the left and right bracket. I'm going to sample over here. I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm simply just going to blend this in just a little bit better. There we go. Let me grab this flyaway, and let's remove those. And I'm going to remove these. So a mixture of the patch tool and the clone stamp seems to do the trick for me when it comes to flyaways. It just depends on the area that I'm working with. Now this flyaway, when I first edited this image, I actually liked it, and I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it up to y'all. If y'all wanna keep this flyaway, I'm gonna decide to keep it, okay? This one here, I might just remove a little bit of it. Sometimes it's good to keep a little bit of flyaways so it feels a little bit more natural. The hair looks too perfect, you kind of lose a little bit of the authentic flow of the hair, especially on this day when it was windy. So I'm going to keep this one for sure. And now what I want to do, now that I've got the flyaways that bothered me, is focus on this blob area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now use the mixer brush. So right now we were on the texture layer. Now I'm going to go to the color backup opacity layer, and I'm going to switch this to my mixer brush. And then up here are my settings if you want to use them. But essentially what I want to do, what I'm doing now, if I hold Alt, is now I'm only working with color. So let me take off the texture so you can see exactly what's going on here. Now what I'm doing is I'm just pushing this color that I want, and I'm just blending this in. And so it's just mixing. Like if I was brushing, if I was painting with acrylic paint, or what's the other one? I can't think of the other one, but you know what I mean, acrylic paint or the other type of mediums out there. Leave me a comment. I can't think right now. But the art teacher at my school would be pissed right now because she uses a different medium besides acrylic, but there's another one. But anyways, I'm just brushing in and I'm just massaging this color to kind of blend this in, okay? Now I'm gonna go in and I'm just slowly just massaging it. A lot of people, and I'm just doing every once in a while, I'm just doing a couple of clicks. Now, if I go into the hair like this, don't worry. We can do a mask in a little bit. So for example, I can come into this folder, frequency separation. I can add a mask, okay? So white means that that effect that I just did is showing up everywhere. I can simply just get my brush tool, set it to black, make sure I have 100% opacity, 100% flow, and I can blend that off just how I want. So sometimes it's actually a good thing to kind of go overboard there. And so now I already got that done. Now we talked about this area up here that wasn't blended right. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So I'm gonna grab some of this section and I'm just gonna blend it in, and just gotta make sure I switch to my mixer brush. And there we go. And I'm just going to, once again, just massage this in ever so slightly. There we go. And that's it. Okay. And there we go. And I might even blur this out a little bit. So I'm going to make a selection with my selection tool, just like that. And I'm going to go filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur, just blur that color if I needed. So wonderful. Now that I have that, so now the color's already done. Let's kind of take a look at what I've done so far. And if I hit this little eyeball before, after, kind of blending those things off. There you go. And so now what I want to do is I want to focus on the actual face now. So I'm going to go into my helper layers. I take off this contrast, it's a little bit overkill. And I'm going to go into multiply, okay? And so what I want to do next is I'm just going to focus on the face. Now I know we're seeing the color here, but that's because I erased it with the mask. So don't worry about that right now. I'm just looking at the face, and all I want to do now is I just want to blend in some of the color. Now I don't want to overdo this because I would rather do it with dodge and burn, but I'm just going to soften up some of the shadows. So this takes a little bit of time to kind of master. I used to overdo it back in the day, but now I've learned to just be real gentle with it. And one of the other things that I've been doing is that in order to soften it, I'm using the lasso tool, making a selection. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fade that out by going to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. 16.6 looks fine. That's ready to rock and roll. And then I'll go into the legs now, and I'm going to also lower the opacity just so I can see it a little bit better. There we go. I'm going to come back to my color opacity layer, and I'm just going to use the mixer brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and soften up the rest of the legs, guys. I'm just using the mixer brush, the same techniques that I've been using right now. I'm also going to be using the Gaussian blur technique as well. And then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take off the black and white helper layer. And I'm going to take a look at the before and after of just the color. So that's looking nice. You can see the subtle differences with the leg. So just like that, real nice and subtle, right? We don't want to get too cute. All right, so that looks good. We got the face looking good. We fixed the hair. So let's look at the overall before and after of what we've done so far. So before and then the after, before and then the after. So that's looking beautiful. Now we're ready to move into dodge and burn. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and run my dodge and burn action. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit play here. And what I wanna do here is change my blend mode to multiply and just lower my opacity. So whenever I'm doing my dodge and burn, I love to work with a black and white layer. Just allows me to see the tonal inconsistencies on the face. So with dodge, I'm just gonna brighten up certain areas, and then with burn, I'm gonna darken up areas. So I'm gonna get my brush tool. Okay, I'm gonna make sure it's set to white. And then I have a brush called Todo el Pelo. There we go. And so now what I wanna do is I don't wanna zoom in too much. Okay, that was one of the biggest mistakes I used to make back when I used to do dodge and burn. And I'm also just gonna be very subtle with it. Ruth already has great skin. I do not need to do too much dodge and burn to fix this. So I'm just gonna slowly go in and just look for areas maybe that are a little bit too dark. So let's focus on the cheek because I think this will be the best area to work with. So I'm just changing the brush size. So my left hand is on the left and the right bracket. So I'm changing it as I go into each little section. And so I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more there. And so I'm just trying to blend that off. I'm going to go to burn now. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to also go and just darken up this section here. And I apologize if you guys hear my dog barking back there. It's the morning right now, so there's people walking, and she loves to bark at everybody that walks. So I hope there's not too many people walking because I don't want to have a dog barking for the rest of the video. But I'm coming over here, I'm going to dodge, and I'm just brightening it up, okay? We're just going very subtle. And I love these settings, 75% opacity, 1% flow. This allows me to be gentle with it, allows me to not go too overboard. And I am using a tablet. That's a question I get quite often. A tablet to me is a game changer. Yes, it is so frustrating to go from a mouse to the tablet. Like I hated it. I was like, nope, I'm gonna stick with my mouse. But once you train yourself to work with the mouse, it's hard to go back to using that because it's just a little bit more, it's faster in my opinion, okay? So I'm gonna push Alt, so I'm gonna go to the mask. Let's take a look at the dodge, what I've done so far. This is what I've done with my dodge. So this is before and then the after, just blended off those things ever so slightly. And let's look at the burn. I hold Alt here. You'll see I've only done a little bit of burn so far, okay? And so that's what I'm gonna be doing for this next step. I'm gonna be moving towards the legs. Now, you know what, let's do this right now. You'll see that the leg is bright, right? And it's because I had the light really close and I had it angled down. So a lot of that light was hitting the leg. So I don't want the audience or the people that are looking at this picture to go straight towards the leg, right? I want them to go towards the face. So what I want to do is I want to go to my burn and I want to slowly decrease that exposure. So I'm going to increase my brush size and I'm just going to be gentle with this and just darken it up ever so slightly, okay? Now, knowing that I want people to look at the face, I'm actually going to go back to dodge and I'm going to actually make a larger brush. And then the same thing, I'm going to just brush in a little bit more exposure just on the face, just ever so slightly, just to get a little bit more attention back to the face, just real nice and subtle. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, guys, is I'm just going to navigate around. There's not a lot to do, but I'm just going to be moving around and just adjusting the brightness and darkness levels wherever I want selectively with the dodge and burn. All right, so now that I'm done with my local dodge and burn, where I'm just selectively brushing it in, I'm gonna now go into my global. Now, what I've done recently is with my dodge and burn layer, just to make sure that I'm not getting too cute, is I've been decreasing my opacity to about 80%. And that just helps me not go overboard with my dodge or my burn. So I'm gonna go 80 here. And then maybe on this one, I didn't do too much dodge or too much burn, I should say. So maybe I'll go like 85% is fine. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make separate dodge and burn layers. Now this is gonna be for my global dodge and burn. This is where now I make things pop and I make things feel more three-dimensional. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my brush tool, and now instead of just using 1% flow, I'm gonna maybe use 3% flow, all right? And what I'm doing is I'm looking at, and I'm thinking about the direction of where I had my light. I had my light camera right. So that means that this side of the face should get more light. So I'm gonna just brighten it up a little bit on this side. Okay, and I'm just gonna do just a couple of taps. I don't wanna make it too much. I'm gonna go tap right there, give a little bit on the nose, on this side of the face, right there, on the hand, maybe just a little bit on the arm. I wanna stay away from this leg because I don't want it to be too bright because that actually got a little bit too much light. Now I had a rim light behind the subject as well. And so I'm gonna add a little bit of glow. Now, those of you that are looking at this picture and you're like, oh man, I like this picture. This is really cool. I wanna know what the settings are and the behind the scenes. Y'all need to follow me on Instagram. Like, OMG. I post a lot of helpful stuff on there as well. So make sure you're following me on there. Now I'm gonna go to the burn and I'm gonna darken up the shoe just a little bit so it doesn't get too much of that light. Darken it up a little bit more on this leg one more time just to make sure that the attention's going there. And then we also have this section here where the light hit the ground. So I'm going to darken that up. So I'm just going to make sure that that's not drawing too much attention as well. So I'm just going to blend that off just like that. Same thing back here. Very cool. There you go. Okay. And so now that's looking good. Now, because the outfit is white, it is a little bit brighter than I would want. So I'm going to darken it up just a little bit. And I'm just using my burn. There we go. And so let me take a look at the before and after. Let me just group these really quick. This is going to be my global. And this is the before and then the after, before, after, just making things pop. Now I am going to come back to my burn and I do need to do a little bit of dimension on the face. So I'm going to go into where the natural shadows are lying. So right here on this cheekbone, right? I'm going to go right here. I'm going to go right here on the nose and a little bit there. And let me brighten up a little bit of the lips right there. And I'm going to darken up underneath the lip ever so slightly. Okay. So once again, I just want to make things feel more three-dimensional. So I'm just darkening up areas that already have those shadows. And right about there should be good. Now I'm going to also lower the opacity on my global just in case I got a little too cute. So that's kind of like my general rule, is just decrease things just to keep things from not going overboard. Now what I want to do is I want to focus on the eyes now. So I have an eyes curves, okay? And so essentially what I want to do is I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to brighten up the eye, okay? Because it got a little too dark. So I'm going to go ahead and come in and I'm going to see, there we go. And I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to brighten that up. Now the eyes are a little bit too red. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make an adjustment layer. I'm going to go to the hue saturation and I'm going to select the reds and I'm going to decrease the saturation. So let's go maybe like -29 is fine. Now that did it to the entire image. So you'll see that the reds have been reduced on the entire image, which we don't want. So I'm going to press Control-I on the keyboard. That's going to invert the mask, basically just hide that effect. So black means I'm hiding everything. That effect is not going anywhere. So now what I want to do is I want to get a white brush and selectively tell Photoshop, I want you to reduce the reds on this area. So I'm going to get my white brush, 100% opacity, 100% flow. And I'm going to now reduce that red in the eyes, just right there. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to name this Catchlight. And what you'll see is that the catchlight isn't as dominant on this eye as it is over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of it. So I'm going to get the clone stamp. I'm going to put sample from the current layer and below, 100% opacity, 100% flow. And I'm going to decrease my brush size okay, right about here, and I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm going to sample that, and I'm going to just simply brush it on right over there, okay? And so now I have a stronger catch light on that eye, and so now we get that beautiful double catch light effect. Now, before we move on to the next step, let's take a look at the overall dodge and burn. So let me kind of zoom in here. This is a before and then the after there. Zoom in a little bit more because a lot of people like to see the details on the face, before and then the after. And one thing that I've noticed that I need to come back to is this hair right here is bothering me. So I'm going to Photoshop it really quick. I'm going to go in back to my frequency separation. I'm going to go to the texture layer, fix this really quick, and then we're going to get into the color grading. All right, now that I'm done with the color grading, or not done with the color grading, done with the skin retouching, now what I want to do is I want to focus on the color grading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come down here. I'm going to go to Selective Color. And what's awesome about this image and what I love about shooting these sunset portraits is that they're very easy to color grade. The in-camera color grading is already here. You have the skin tones with the oranges and the reds. Then you have the beautiful blues in the sky. So there's really not a lot of color grading to do. So I'm going to start it off. I'm going to do 3 different selective color adjustments. So the first one, this is mainly for the skin tone. So I'm going to go cyan to about -4, if I can get there. And then we're going to go +5 and +5. So if you want to know more about selective color, I have a tutorial that covers all of the basics. And I love selective color. If you're a beginner in Photoshop, this is one of the easiest tools to color grade. And it's very easy to use because I'm selecting the color, which is the reds and yellows. And that's where the skin tones usually lie on, right? So everything I'm making an adjustment here is really focused on the skin tones here, but a little bit of the background as well. So right here, just did a subtle effect. So I have to zoom in here because you all won't see anything. And if you all are not seeing this adjustment, it might be because I'm using my BenQ Monitor. So before and after, it's very subtle. I can definitely see it on my end, but you guys might not be able to see it depending on if you're looking on a monitor that's not calibrated or an iPhone. So now what I want to do is now I want to make a selection of just the background. So I do have this action, and you guys can purchase these if you want. But basically, it's selective color, but it's going to select the background. So I'm going to hit the play button here. And basically what this action does, and the reason why I created it, is that it's going to cut out the subject. And now I can just specifically color grade just the background and focus on that without adjusting any of the skin tones or the body. So now that that adjustment's been made, you'll see right here that only the areas in white are going to be adjusted. What I want to do now is I want to actually color grade the background. So this one is going to take a little bit more time. I'm going to go reds here, and I'm going to go ahead and type it in just to be a little bit faster. I'm going to go -15, I'm sorry. And I want to make sure that I'm getting these deep, rich colors. I have that beautiful background there, and that's what inspired the photograph. I'm always looking for color, and if I get color in the image, I want to make sure I push and elevate that color when I get into my raw processor, whatever that is, whether that's Lightroom or Capture One. And then, of course, when I get into Photoshop, I really want to push these. So reds and yellows to focus on the sunset. Now I'm going to select the cyans, and I'm going to go 10 here. I'm going to go -5 and -5. And then last but not least, I'm going to go into the blues because there's a little bit of blues back there. I'm going to go 30, 12, 6, and 8, okay? And so I've already done a majority of my color grading just there with just those 2 simple adjustments. If I press Control G here, I'm just gonna name this color grade so that we can be nice and organized. This already has a nice, beautiful color grade. Look at that, just bringing out those colors. It's just elevating ever so slightly back there. Sorry about that, let me zoom out a little bit more. And if I hit the before and then the after, you'll see that I'm just bringing out those colors even more. Now, I even want to push this sunset, this orange, and I want to push it a little bit more as well. So what I want to do is I'm going to make another selective color layer, okay? But this time I'm going to press Control I on the keyboard, where now it's completely blank. And what I want to tell Photoshop is I just want you to color grade specifically the sunset. So what I need to do is I need to brush and tell Photoshop from here to here to here, this is where I want to color grade. So what you'll see is you'll see a little eyeball there, or not an eyeball, but the little area that I was brushing. So I'm going to brush over here as well. So this is the area that I want to color grade as well. So I'm going to hit the backslash key, and I'm going to make sure I have the white brush, and I'm going to brush, 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 right around there. And I hit the backslash key. This is the area that I'm going to be color grading. And so right now, just because it's a YouTube tutorial, I might not be as precise, but I might take my time a little bit more. But you guys get the general idea, right? So that area is going to be color graded now. And so now what I want to do is I want to focus once again on those reds and those yellows. So when you're color grading, guys, and you have a specific color, use layer mask to really target the area that you're going to want to color grade. Don't just use it on a whole selective color layer. It's okay to make multiple layers just so you can be more precise. So just by making that adjustment, look at how those colors are popping back there, here and here. And so that's just the reds. And now I'm going to go into the yellows, and I'm going to go -2. We're going to go -3. And then we're going to go 4. And now I'm fully done with my color grade with selective color. So let me group everything here together. This is the before and then the after. Everything's looking nice and beautiful. Again, I don't know why that keeps zooming in like that. Let's see, let's zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. There you go. And before, and then the after. So that's looking awesome. Now we're on to the last step here. Believe it or not, this image doesn't need a lot. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to do my raw vato loco. I always like going back into camera raw and making some final adjustments. I'm going to hit the playback button here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the adjustments that I made in my camera raw. So I'm going to double click. And all this is, guys, it just makes a merged copy of everything that I've done. And it makes the camera raw filter into a smart filter. This is just a personal choice. I love to use camera raw filter. You don't have to do this step. Some people are like, bro, you don't have to do that. But hey, YOLO, man. That's what I like doing. You do you, baby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look for Ruth YouTube bus August 2020 or 2022. And what you'll see is that I just added a little bit of contrast, reduced the blacks a little bit, brought up that clarity to make it a little bit sharper. Did a little bit of sharpening. And now let's look at the HSL. So the HSL, this is the skin tone here, making the skin tone brighter or darker, and also the background here. So at the original point, I put +4, but I'm probably going to bring it down a little bit. Let's go +2 since I did make it brighter. So these are some of the settings I made, just kind of adjusting how bright those colors I want them to be. Didn't do anything to saturation. And then the hue is very important. This kind of helps enrich the skin tone. So I went -2, -2 on the reds and the oranges. Then when I got into my color grading, my highlights, added a little bit of blues into my highlights. And then I added a little bit of like those brown kind of mocha colors into my shadows. Added a little bit of grain. I'm going to add, you know what, let's add a little bit more. Let's go 16, okay? And then here I have my calibration. This one's very important. Just want to tweak the colors ever so slightly. Once again, don't get too cute with this one. You can do some really cool stuff with it if you push it a little bit, but you have to be careful and not push it too much. I might bring down my exposure just a little bit. Should I bring it down? Yeah, let's bring it down just a little bit there. And I'm going to bring down my lights ever so slightly, right about, let's go -1 and highlights -1. And then that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK there, guys. And now this is my overall before and after. So I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard. This is my before. And this is my after. So let's look at the buildup once again from the beginning. We started off removing the softbox and the light pole. We still had some crusty color here. And then we got into frequency separation using the mixture brush to get rid of that. We got rid of some of the flyaways with the texture layer using the patch tool. And then we reduced some of the skin blemishes with the patch tool and then using the Gaussian blur technique. Then we got into the local and global dodge and burn where we smoothed out parts of the skin and we made the face pop just a little bit more and reduced the exposure on the leg. Then we used 3 different selective color adjustment layers to really get those colors to pop and elevate the image. Once again, when you have color in your image, guys, make sure those colors are popping. And then we finished it off with the Raw Photo Loco Camera Raw filter settings. And this is it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so if you all enjoyed this edit, I have plenty of editing tutorials on my YouTube channel. And if you love this photograph, please follow me on Instagram, ladies and gentlemen, because I have a lot of helpful content on Instagram, behind the scenes, everything, you name it. Thank you so much for watching. And thanks again to Fiverr for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out Fiverr to check out the services available to you and get 10% off with code Eli Infante.